Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Woolfolk again. Woolfolk the other way at the 30, the 40. Woolfolk to midfield. Miles Woolfolk with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5. Takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Sam Howe showing the toughness for 6.
Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right.
Goes to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag.
Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll to the far side.
Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown. May throws it late with the left hand. Was rolling out on the run and threw it left-handed. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Theo at the 35. Theo, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Theo, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys. As always, Josh Marlowe alongside of me once again tonight here as it's time to preview Carolina's game against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. The Tar Heels going on the road on Saturday to take on Wake Forest in Winston-Salem as they look to get a step closer to making a bowl game this season. An amazing feat after where Carolina was at earlier in the year, going from one of the least competitive group of five or Power 5 teams, looking like a group of 5 team, going from one of the least competitive to being one of the more competitive here down the stretch in the last 4 games. 2 straight wins for Carolina now. They'll try to make it a third against a team that they have owned in their program's history. The Tar Heels lead the all-time series 73-36-2. The Tar Heels have won the last 4 in this series and really have just, they've played some epic classics, a lot of great offensive games between these two sides. We do not expect that is going to be the case in this one. We talked about it, a little bit on the last edition of the show about how confident we feel going into this final stretch of the season for Carolina. Both of us really thinking that Carolina is going to make a run at a bowl game here and that they should be able to make it into a bowl game with the schedule that they have here at the end of the season. But it starts with this game against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. So we'll tell you everything that you need to know about them. We'll also take a look at the Tar Heels storylines for this game, get to the keys to the game, and then the predictions for the game. And we have a closing note tonight of a commitment in the 2026 class. Carolina flipping another player from Penn State, this time in the defensive backfield. So Carolina's getting aggressive in terms of being able to flip these guys that are coming from schools that have already fired their head coach. It shows you that Carolina, looks like they are telling everybody that, look, everything is perfectly fine here. This staff is going to remain in place next season, at least for the most part. And that is part of the reason why they're having some success. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when you talk about the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, let's just talk about the fact that they are 6-3 on the season, doing an amazing job, of really taking charge of some of the games that they've had here in ACC play. They are a missed call against Georgia Tech away from being 7-2. And being 4-2 right in the hunt to make the ACC championship game. Jake Dickert has done an amazing job there as head coach. And this is going to be a challenge for the Tar Heels. There's no doubt about that when they face the Wake Forest Demon Deacons on Saturday there in Winston-Salem.
Well, the most impressive thing is that it came completely out of the blue. You go back to the week one of the season, they were a blown call away maybe from losing to Kennesaw State at home. In a game that they barely won. And that game either went to overtime or was on the doorstep of going into overtime. And we kind of all sat here and thought, okay, this is probably going to be a year one rebuild for them. Remember, Dave Clawson kind of retired kind of late into the offseason. They were able to get a quality head coach like Jake Dicker to come lead their program. But with the way that, rosters get built now, it wasn't ideal with the portal. But yet they sit here now, and as you mentioned, they're a blown call away from already being, from where they should be 7-2, should be 4-2 in the league. But the fact that they're 6-3 and 3-3 in the league is already an achievement in and of itself, an overachievement in and of itself. And depending on how they close the regular season, Jake Dicker could be looking to be the ACC Coach of the Year. And with as many high-profile jobs that are available, his name will come up because there's only so many coaches that can fill some of these jobs. And when you look at what he's done at Wake Forest in such a short time span, if Penn State, if Florida, if Auburn, if those schools swing and miss on the big-time coaches that they want to get, this will be a name that they will pivot to because he won at Wazoo. He's already winning at Wake Forest, two of the more difficult places to win at in the current climate of college football. So I think that's the neat thing about this is that if you go off of week one, you would have thought this team would be lucky to win 4 games. But that's why you can't overreact to what happens the first week of the season because they've emerged as a quality team as there is in the ACC. And Carolina's going to have their hands full on Saturday afternoon trying to pick up a win on the road.
Yeah, Kennesaw State, by the way, one of the teams that is having a much better season in year 2 at the Division I level than they had in year 1. Definitely a team that I think caught some people off guard, caught Wake a little bit off guard. But that game really is telling because you look at how they've played a lot of games since that moment, and it's a very similar type of game that Wake Forest is playing. Very similar to Carolina. This has been a team that over the last few years has been dreadful defensively. I mean, one of the worst teams in the ACC year in and year out. And yet, this is a group that this year is much more defensively sound. They're one of the probably least talked about defenses in the ACC, but should be. I mean, this is a group that is having a really strong year. But we'll start with the offense. They're a group that doesn't put up a lot of points, but they make the plays that they have to be able to win games. They're averaging 23.3 points per game, 356.7 total yards of offense per game, 215.6 passing yards per game, and 141.1 rushing yards per game. Robbie Ashford is their starting quarterback. And look, he may not have mind-blowing stats, but he has been effective moving the football when they've needed him to be. Now, the thing for him is that at times he does turn the football over. That's something that we have seen from him. So that could be something that Carolina could look to attack. I mean, he has a 3-to-5 touchdown to interception ratio. So that's certainly something that Carolina is hoping that they can find a way to create in this game or a few turnovers off of him. Of course, he's been on and off the field this year with some injuries. Got banged up in a game earlier in the season, so Deshaun Purdy stepped in for him. Purdy, another guy that Carolina just has to be ready to see just in case. 596 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions just in case they see him. Where this offense really runs through, though, is its running game, led by Damon Claiborne. He is a guy that came into the season as one of the leading rushers in the conference. Many people believe that he was in for an easy 1,000-yard rushing season, but he's another guy that's had some moments where he's been banged up this season and isn't necessarily dominating the way that I think a lot of people thought he was going to dominate. Even still, you know, he is averaging 5.5 yards per carry. He's got 714 yards 8 touchdowns so far this year, 131 carries to his name. So he is a guy that certainly has been a weapon for them at that running back position. Out of the backfield, does have 21 catches, but has turned that into just 98 yards. Still something that Carolina has to be aware of in this game, but he's certainly someone that it could challenge this Tar Heel run defense that has been really, really good for the most part this season. You go to the pass catching group, it's a solid one, not one that's going to blow you away. And part of that, I think, is because the quarterback play isn't exactly going to blow you away at certain times. But Chris Barnes, Sterling Burkhalter, and Micah May Jr., or Micah Mays Jr., they all have had their moments where they have been really good this season for Wake Forest. Mays Jr., the guy that can really take the top off of defenses if you aren't careful. Barnes and Burkhalter, more guys that are going to be possession receivers, but certainly guys that Carolina has to be aware of. The offensive line, much better than the last two that Carolina has faced. I mean, you talk about two of the worst offensive lines that you could see in all of college football. That's what you have seen in the last 2 weeks. But this is still a group that is allowing some pressure. 2 guys that are allowing double-digit pressures already so far this season. A couple of other guys that are teetering on that mark as well. So definitely a group that Carolina will hope to take advantage of in this game. The other thing about them, they have taken a lot of penalties, that offensive line group. So that is certainly something that could go in Carolina's favor as well. When you look at this offense, it feels a little bit like Carolina's with a better running game. I mean, Claiborne's been more consistent than Carolina's runners have been. Also, Robbie Ashford throwing for more yards than Gio Lopez has. But this is not an offense to brag about. The Tar Heels defense, the way they've been playing, should be able to match up well against this group. But there are some areas that they do have to be buttoned up to make sure that that Wake Forest doesn't have a successful day offensively.
I think what they are offensively is what Carolina is aspiring to be, which is a run-first football team, which Carolina most certainly is. Now, you look at Claiborne, obviously, I think from a talent perspective, is he a more gifted running back than any running back Carolina has on their roster? I believe that answer is yes. But also, he doesn't have to deal with what, Damon June has to deal with, where he's going to touch the football. If he's healthy, they're going to feature him 15, 20, 25 times per game. But their passing game, it's just opportunistic, man. It's a passing offense that when they need to make those surefire plays, they've been able to, despite having to rotate quarterbacks. And then despite both those quarterbacks having some of the same limitations that even Gio Lopez has as well. And so, it's not an offense that I think we're gonna be worried about Carolina getting in a track meet with, because Wake Forest, like Carolina, knows they cannot play that way. But if they can run the football and live in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, then this offense can be efficient. And I think that's going to be really the difference in the ball game on Saturday, is which offense makes the most out of their possessions, because both teams are going to want to shorten the game. We talk about Carolina wanting to play maybe at maximum 8 to 10 possessions. Well, so does Wake Forest. Wake Forest doesn't want to play a high possession football game. It's a lot different than the games we're used to seeing these two teams play, where when Mac Brown was here and you had Sam Howell and Drake May going up against Sam Hartman, I mean, it was a race to 50. And it was the more times you touched the ball, the more times you had a chance to score. It's a completely different feeling this time around. And so, no, this isn't an offense that is going to scare you, but they can be efficient. And that's going to be the thing, is can Carolina's defense continue to do what they've done really since the second bye week? Can you stop the run? Can you get the teams into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, so you can disguise some pressure, scheme up some pressure, and get after the quarterback and force a lot of punts, and maybe, force a mistake or two. So, I think this Carolina defense, which is playing as well as it's played all year long, should be confident they can come in here and do what they need to do against an offense that, like Carolina's offense, is very limited in terms of the explosive plays they're capable of putting up on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's really going to come down to whose offense is more efficient. And we've seen, the way that Wake Forest has been able to play for most of the year. You would feel like coming in, you probably have more confidence in this Wake Forest offense. I mean, they're literally what Carolina is, except they have executed at certain times, and it's what's led to the wins. If Carolina was, it was able to execute against Cal and Virginia, then we're talking about a much different team. We're talking about a team that's right there already in bowl game, and again is fighting just like Wake. If we play the what if game for them, fighting to potentially get to Charlotte when it's all said and done. So, I mean, that's the thing. This team has been, effective when they've needed to be. They've made the plays that they've needed to make, and that's how they've gotten here. So Carolina's defense has to find a way to prevent them from making those plays if they're going to win this game. You go to the defensive side of the ball for Wake Forest. This defense, this is one of the best defenses that Carolina has faced all season long. This is a group that's allowing just 20.3 points per game, 325.3 yards of total offense. I mean, just to put into perspective, I mean, the team that you played a week ago was allowing over 290 passing yards per game through the air. So this is just a completely different unit that you are facing in this game. I mean, passing yards, 188.2 passing yards per game, one of the better pass defenses in all the country, 137.1 rushing yards allowed per game. The defensive line has been really solid in both run and pass defense and is getting a ton of pressure on the quarterback thanks to guys like Nur Gotkuth, Mateen Ibi Rogba, and Langston Hardy. So, I mean, look, those guys have been really good for most of the year. There are plenty of other guys that are getting pressure there as well. They have 5 guys that are over 15 quarterback pressures already this season. They have 19 sacks on the year, which is a solid number, but the fact that they are getting as much pressure as they are, that's what throws quarterbacks off. So Carolina got to be much better as an offensive line unit than they were a week ago in order to keep these defensive linemen from getting into the backfield and making plays. 63 tackles for loss on the season, by the way, for them, which is a really, really strong mark, especially for this group. You go to the linebacker core. This might be the weakest part of this defense, and it's still in very capable hands. Dylan Hazen has been a guy that's been a starter for most of the year. He's been fantastic. And then you have Quincy Bryant and Frank Cusano, who are switching on and off at linebacker. They, really just alternate throughout the entire game. And both of those guys have had their moments where they've looked pretty good. There's been some moments that they've struggled with missed tackles. That's one of the reasons why some of their Pro Football Focus grades not as high as they would like to be, probably. But at the same time, I think this is a group that's more than capable of doing the things that they need to do against any offense to be able to succeed, as shown by the rushing numbers, which is, it's still in a really solid spot, especially for a team that you can't pass on. And these guys have held their own in coverage as well for the most part. The defensive backs might be the best that Carolina has seen all season long, and that's really saying something. There have been some defensive backfields that earlier in the year Carolina faced that were pretty good, like TCU's and Clemson's, but this one might just be the best. Nick Anderson having an outstanding year at safety. I mean, he is everywhere on the football field, leads the team in tackles with 76 already so far this season, including 5 tackles for loss out of a safety spot. That is really, really impressive, but also a guy that's done really well in coverage. In years past, he was picked on a bit in coverage. This year, he is allowing a pretty high completion percentage, but at the same time, he hasn't allowed it to go for a ton of yards, just 10.8 yards per reception, and has allowed just 1 touchdown so far this year while having 4 pass breakups. So he is certainly a guy that has stepped his game up. Karan Prunty at corner might be one of the best corners in the ACC that no one talks about. Just 15 of his 35 targets have been caught this year, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns he's allowed, but does have 1 interception and 4 pass breakups, allowing just a 67.3 quarterback rating against so far this season. So that is a really good mark for an outside corner. Definitely someone that Carolina has to be aware of. And by the way, if you're thinking that you can attack the other side of the field, well, Ladarius Webb on the other side of the field has been playing pretty well as well. This group, pretty loaded, one of the best in the ACC, certainly going to be a challenge for an offense that still has not seemed to find its complete stride at this point in the season for Carolina.
Yeah, this defense is very impressive. And a lot of it is they win up front, they stop the run, and they get these offenses in the 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, and they can just lock up man to man across the board and hold their own. And that's really difficult to do, I think, in this day and time, unless you can win up front, and that's what they do. And that's why we're going to need Carolina's offensive line to maybe play their best game they've played all year. And I don't know where the confidence is in that after some of the struggles they had last week against Stanford. They're physical, they're sound, they don't make a lot of mistakes. They're going to make the tackles that in open space. And they just don't beat themselves. They've been all season long what Carolina's defense has been the last handful of weeks. And that's just really a testament to Jake Dickert and their coaching staff, because like Carolina, they need their defense to be what their defense is to give them their best chance to win football games. And they have been. You're talking about last week, they gave up 9 points on the road at Virginia. Now, granted, Chandler Morris entered that game or left that game with injury, but even before he got injured, it wasn't like they were moving the football. And we know how good that Virginia offense has been up until they saw Carolina. And here most recently, they saw Florida State. You go back to what they did against Haynes King and that offense, which at the time was rolling. They did a really good job just pulling them into a phone booth. And like I said, the blown call away, they should have won the game. They had a double-digit lead in the 4th quarter before Georgia Tech was able to make that comeback. So if you love watching defensive football, I think you love watching Wake Forest, because they've got guys primarily at the front 4 and in their secondary. But make no mistake about it, this is a 3-level defense. That have guys that can make plays, that can impact the football game. And so this is going to be the best game that Gio Lopez has played so far this season. We're going to need Freddie Kitchens to put together his best game plan so far this season. And you're going to need Carolina just to have guys make plays. You're going to have Jordan Shipp, Kobe Paysour, maybe win some one-on-one battles on the outside that maybe they haven't won at different times so far this season, because Wake Forest is going to make it difficult to consistently move the football up and down the field. And so if you're an old school football fan, this is the game for you, because I think this game has 17-14 written all over with the way both these defenses are playing against both offenses that are a little bit more compromised than we're used to seeing from these two programs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, the way that they've really been playing recently. I mean, against Virginia Tech, allowed 23 points. Against Oregon State, allowed 14 points. SMU allowed 12 points. And then Virginia allowed 9. Now, I will say that there is a game in between SMU and Virginia that just leaves you scratching your head. And that's Florida State, who was able to score 42 against them and won 42-7. So this is a team that does have these moments. And for some reason, Carolina has owned this series recently. Maybe that gets in the head of Wake Forest. Hopefully it does. But I do think that, Carolina's got to be on their P's and Q's in this game. This is where you really need the efficiency of this offense to work out. You need a complete performance from Gio Lopez, because we haven't seen that yet. We've seen flashes from him. We've seen games that we've liked here recently, but we haven't really seen him put it all together for a full game. I mean, you go back to the Syracuse game, first half, some struggles for him. In that second half, really takes over, leads Carolina to the victory. Same thing in the second half of the game last week against Stanford because of the first half. I mean, people were calling for him to be benched in favor of Bryce Baker or Arturi Newkirk just to get a look at them because it had to be better than what we're seeing from Gio Lopez. In the second half, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, and all of a sudden we're saying, hey, he's still the guy that gives Carolina the best chance to win. So I'll be interested to see against this defense what it looks like. I think, for Carolina, they've got to be able to run the ball. There's no doubt about that. And we'll talk about that more here as we transition to the Tar Heel storylines for this game. And that's really one of the main things that I'm looking at is how does this Tar Heel running game bounce back against a defense that, is having a really successful year. They're winning up front. That's going to be a concern for Carolina because Stanford coming into last week, they were doing a decent job of winning up front, but it wasn't nearly as consistent as what we've seen from Wake Forest. So, this offensive line for Carolina, there's been a lot of injuries. There's a lot of new faces from the start of the season that are in there. Now you've got Jordan Hall at left tackle. He was, up and down in his performance this past week. You saw a lot of Ja'Kai Moore this week. I would expect that you will see more of that rotation there between Moore and Miles McVay. If he continues to play the way that he played last week, he was Carolina's worst run blocker in that game against Stanford, where they really struggled to run the football. It all starts up front for me. And yes, you need the continuity. There's no doubt about that. From the running back group, you need to find a rotation that you like and stick with it, preferably with Damon June as the lead back and Davian Goss as that second running back that's taking the handoffs. But I think it really starts up front for Carolina if they want to have success in the run game in this one, something that they will have to do if they're going to pull out a victory.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I do think this could be the game where if they do it the right way, utilizing June and Goss and splitting the carries could be beneficial because you could really use June to really pound the ball up the middle and really try to soften them up on the edge and get Goss out there and maybe get some easier yards. And just as the game progresses, those 3 to 4 yard carries become 5, 6, 7 yard carries as you get deeper into the second half. But none of that matters if Carolina cannot be more what they were, the previous in the game against Syracuse up front, as opposed to what you saw last week where they really struggled to move Stanford. It wasn't like they were getting a great push up front off the line of scrimmage. So you've got to get back to moving guys. But to me, I think this just comes down to toughness. And this might just be a game where you're going to need your running backs to break tackles. And you're going to need your rack, your run after contact to be the best that it's been all year. And I think Carolina is capable of doing that because of the way that June and Goss can run the football. It really just comes down to the play design. Like last week, you ran Goss, I think 11 times, but you ran him up the middle. He's a more, of a guy that I want him running on the outside. I want him running off tackle as opposed to inside. And so I think that's got to be the thing as well, is how Carolina wants to attack them running the football is going to be key. But, hopefully a second week to kind of prepare with this new look offensive line because of the injuries, a chance to look at what they did good on film, what they did wrong on film. They can kind of correct that this week in practice, but make no mistake about it, it's probably not going to be sexy, but Freddie Kitchens has to stay consistent running the football, because I think if he gets into a situation where he feels like he has to throw the ball to win the game, and Gio Lopez is attempting 28 to 30 passes or more, I don't know that's a good thing for Carolina. So it's really about staying consistent with the run game and just hoping over the course of 4 quarters maybe you can wear down that defensive front that's been stout for them all year long.
Yeah, and it's just, as you said, it's really all about toughness for this group. They've got to bring it in this game. That was one of the things that we thought we were going to see under Bill Belichick, It's been inconsistent. There's been moments where Carolina has looked really tough in some of these games with the way that they've been able to run the ball. There's other games where they don't necessarily look nearly as tough. They look a lot like last year's group that at times just gets pushed around. And here's the thing. As good as Damon June is, as good as Davian Goss is, neither one of those guys are Omarion Hampton. They are not the guys that are going to be able to shake off 2-3 tacklers and find a way to pick up 4 or 5 yards consistently. That's just not how they run. So I definitely think that it's on the offensive line to step up. As you said, you need to call the right runs too, because last week you weren't doing it. Why are you running Davian Goss in between the tackles as much as you were? That doesn't make any sense. We know that Davian Goss is a guy that thrives off tackle. That's what he has become here this year for Carolina. And so if that's going to be the case, then utilize him that way. Let's get him out in space. We did it on the one drive where Carolina was able to drive down the field and take the 10-3 lead. He was the guy that Carolina was throwing to. Well, let's find a way to get him out in space with some of these carries as well and allow him to be successful out there. And then with Damon June, yeah, that's where you need the run blocking to be good, because if he's going to run up the middle, well, you need to clear some path, some space for him in order to do that. The other thing with Damon June is that they just have to learn as a coaching staff, if he is having an off night to start, you cannot just completely bail on him in the run game and just hope that eventually, whenever you go back to him, either the next week or the week after that, that he's going to be able to pick it up. You need him to build some of that momentum. And the best way to do that is to actually run him. I've said it. I don't really know what Benjamin Hall brings for Carolina. I think he is way too patient of a runner. I think he should be the third back that Carolina utilizes in this system. But he's a guy that the staff really loves, and so they're probably going to be consistently using him. It's about figuring out how to use him the right way as well. Another storyline on the offensive side of the ball is, as we mentioned, Gio Lopez, and really looking for more consistency against one of the toughest defenses that he's faced so far this season. We know at this point that the deep passing game is not going to be there for Gio Lopez. That's just not something that's a part of his game. At any sort of consistent level. There might be one pass a game that he's able to hit downfield, if that. We've seen it, in the game against TCU, he hit a big play. In the game against Charlotte, of course, he hit a big play. If there's a blown coverage, he might be able to take advantage of it for you. But outside of that, if he's throwing downfield with any sort of coverage, it is not going to usually work out for Carolina. So, coming into this game, that, from him, you need to be more consistent in the first half of games, really, with your short and intermediate passing, because Carolina, especially if they can't run the ball like they were unable to last week against Stanford, you're going to need him to be able to drive this offense down the field. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for Carolina's offense to be able to move the ball efficiently. They haven't really been able to do it all season long, outside of maybe that game against Richmond. And really outside of that, I can't think of another game where Carolina's been able to move their offense consistently. At least, maybe the Virginia game, maybe that's a script that you can use. But outside of that, it just doesn't look like there really is that much efficiency to this offense. It's really, at times, you got to take advantage of certain drives for Carolina. In the last 2 weeks, it's been once we get to the second half, we're able to take advantage of that. For Carolina, I think in this game, one of the things that they want to do is get off to a fast start, get a lead, and be able to sort of control the game. And in order to do that, it's going to fall on the arm of Gio Lopez being able to make plays for them, especially if they're not able to win up front in the run game.
Yeah, we've seen growth and development the last 2 weeks in the wins, and even you saw progress in the losses to Cal and to Virginia. He's yet to play 4 quarters, and that's really what's going to be necessary if Carolina is going to do what they need to do across the final 3 games to win 2 of them to go to a bowl game. I don't know if he can play the way he's played the last 2 weeks in the first half and Carolina find ways to win. Maybe he can, because of where Carolina's defense is at right now. I just find that hard to believe. So you need the Gio Lopez that you saw in the second half against Stanford, where he was efficient, was effective. But you need that over the course of 4 quarters, because he's gonna have to make some throws in this game as well. I think Carolina's gonna want to utilize the screen game, especially with their running backs. And I think that's a great way to get him into rhythm and to build some early confidence in him and himself. But then you got to make those intermediate throws that he's really struggled to make really all season long. And the good news is that you've seen Jordan Shipp, Kobe Paysour. Those 2 guys have really emerged. Freddie Kitchens is a lot more committed trying to get those 2 guys the football. I mean, that's a good thing, because those are the 2 best pass weapons right now for Carolina. And those guys probably going to need to have 6 catches each and probably have anywhere from 8 to 10 targets each. And you just got to make the most of them. Is this going to be a passing offense that's going to throw for 300 yards? No. 1, they're not equipped to do so. 2, Wake Forest isn't going to allow you to do so. But you got to be timely, and you got to convert on some of those plays. And so I think this could be a game that could really start to change the narrative around Gio. If he goes on the road, leads Carolina to a win, and plays really, really well, I think Carolina fans will begin to think differently about him and what he's been able to do this season, because he would have Carolina on the brink of getting to a bowl game. If you see the Gio Lopez that we've seen at different times where Carolina's been not competitive and they weren't able to do what they needed to do on offense, this could be all she wrote. It could really be what signals that Carolina will go look for a quarterback again in the portal this upcoming off season. So it'll be interesting to see. This will be one of the tougher matchups he's had to face all year long. But hey, this is what you signed up for when you chose to come play at Carolina. This is what you signed up for when you got paid $2.1 million. And hopefully he gives a $2.1 million performance on the road on Saturday, because Carolina's going to need him to be at his best to give them a chance to win.
I mean, he doesn't even need to do that. I mean, if you could give us $1 million performance, I feel like we would take it. You're right. Down the stretch of the season, this is an important time for him, because if he wants to be back next season at Carolina, then he has to show that he is able to successfully run an offense at the power conference level. That's the thing, is that you've got to see. I get it. He's not going to be back with Freddie Kitchens next season. It's seeming like everything that I've been told, everything that anybody around the program has pretty much been told, is that Freddie Kitchens is not going to be here next year. They are going to go in a different direction, an offensive coordinator. But at the same time, you've got to be able to show that you can run some sort of power 4 offense and be successful. We've seen some flashes from him, but it just hasn't been where we've needed it to be. And yeah, this defense, this is the toughest defense that you're going to face down the stretch here. Out of these 3 opponents that you face, this is the one that can tell us the most. If you find a way to win this game, if you find a way to make the most play, but to make to make the right plays at the end of the game for Carolina, and you can find a way to win this one, then we can start to have the conversation about, should Gio Lopez at least get a shot to come back next year. I don't think anybody's going to say he deserves the job outright, but I think there will be some people that would say, okay, maybe we at least give him a shot to come back next year and compete for the job. I just need you to do enough to win this game, because if you win this game and you take the pressure of having to win your last 2 off of you, then it feels like this team will have a legitimate shot to make a bowl game. It's when they get their backs up against the wall in that 4-6 situation that I think then you have to worry. But look, this is one game right here where, even though this is the best defense you play, this is the worst quarterback that you play the rest of the season. So there's a chance that you can outduel him. I don't know if you can outduel Darian Mensah, if you can outduel CJ Bailey. Both of those guys are playing extremely well, especially Mensah, who might be the best quarterback in this conference. You've got to take advantage of this game if you're Gio Lopez. Put together a strong performance. Lean on the guys that have gotten you where you've gotten the last couple of weeks. You've had some success going with Jordan Shipp and Kobe Paysour as your main targets. Lean on that. Utilize the running backs out of the backfield. You had the big gain on the screenplay that for a touchdown to Damon June. You had a couple of nice plays to Davian Goss last week, including his touchdown. Lean on those guys throughout the game and allow this team to be successful in the passing game. If you do, then you've got a chance for Carolina to win this game. When you go to the defensive side of the ball, really, I think it's when you start, it really starts with this run defense. Carolina has been really, really good in run defense for most of the season. Outside of really that game against TCU and a little bit in the game against UCF, where they allowed Taven Jackson, the quarterback, to really run for a lot of yards, not necessarily the running backs. Carolina's run defense has been really good for most of the season. Now, though, you're faced with maybe the toughest running back that you have played so far this season, at least the most well-known in terms of his history coming into the season. How do you perform in this game against a Wake Forest team that's doing a pretty decent job in run blocking and has a running back that is as dynamic as Damon Claiborne? This is where you need to see this unit step up and play the way that they have played in some of these games recently. Look, they were tested in a game against Virginia here recently and really, showed up and played incredibly well. Let's see if they can do the exact same thing in this game against Wake Forest. If those guys on the interior can take this challenge of having to play someone as dynamic as Damon Claiborne and find a way to put together a strong performance.
Yeah, I think they'll be motivated to do so, because you come out and continue to do what you've done the last handful of weeks, then the narrative can't be, well, Carolina's defense is taking advantage of bad offenses or bad offensive players. And I don't think that's what Carolina's been doing the last handful of weeks. I think Carolina's just been playing just really good defensive football. You can't help what your opponents are and what your opponents aren't. This is an offense that doesn't feature a great quarterback, so they're going to ask their running back to be the difference maker, and he's capable of being just that. Like, you're talking about a guy that, a former 1,000-yard rusher. I don't know if he's on pace to be 1,000 yards this year or not, but I mean, he can be explosive. He can be dynamic. He has the potential to be the best player on the football field for either team. And so this run defense has been the anchor of Carolina's defensive resurgence all year. I've told you that, outside of really TCU, there wasn't a game that I've either been at in person or watched on television where I came away and wasn't pleased with what Carolina had done in the run game. And the thing is that if you can really take away the run and limit Damon Claiborne's impact, and you put Robbie Ashford in a position where he has to beat you with his arm, I don't think he can do it. I just don't. And I think Carolina knows that, and I think that's going to be the message leading into this game is, hey, we've had some quarterbacks where we put them in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and they beat us. And not that that's okay, but sometimes you got to tip your cap to the opponent, because that guy's just made a play. I don't think Robbie Ashford's going to do that. And if Robbie Ashford does, then I'll come on here and say I was wrong, tip my cap to him, and say he finally lived up to the potential of the quarterback he thought he could have been at Auburn or at South Carolina here at Wake Forest. But I don't think it's going to be the case. I think Carolina's going to sell out to stop the run. I think you're going to see a lot of 8-9-man boxes to take him away. And then make Robbie Ashford beat you with your arm. And so this defense is confident. They're not cocky, but they've got an attitude and a swagger, and it all starts up front with that defensive line that is maybe the most unheralded the defensive line in the ACC. But the more they continue to play the way they played the last month or so, the more they'll have to be talked about on a local and a national level, because what they've done is nothing short of remarkable, considering where we thought this group was going to be after we lost Bryce Yates. They've really rallied and become the heart and soul of this Carolina defense and this football team.
Yeah, I definitely think they deserve a ton of credit there. There's no doubt about that. This game, it's going to be important for the guys on the interior of this defensive line to win. There's no doubt about that. You need guys like Leroy Jackson, CJ Mims, Isaiah Johnson, DeAndre Robinson to continue playing the way that they've played. Those are the keys to really getting Carolina off the ground when it comes to stopping the run. But this game, it's going to be more important than just about any other game that you've played this season, that you contain the edges, because not only do you have to worry about Damon Claiborne, we haven't talked about it yet, and I should have mentioned it when I talked about the quarterback position. You've got to be aware of Robbie Ashford and his legs too. He is certainly a guy that succeeds in that area. I mean, hell, this was the way that he made his money at his previous stops, was that he was mobile. And that's the reason that he was able to get on the field. This year, he's showing you what he can ultimately be at his best. And an efficient passer that makes the right plays that he needs to in the passing game to go along with his running ability. And this is something that Carolina's got to be careful of in this game. They haven't seen a runner this dynamic at the quarterback spot really since Taven Jackson. And to be honest with you, I don't even think Taven Jackson is on Robbie Ashford's level in terms of his mobility and the ability to really affect the run game. So Carolina, the edge rushers, they got to be smart in this game. I get it. You want to pin your ears back, get after the quarterback. In certain situations, you're going to be able to do that. But even on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, you've got to make sure that you're containing the pocket the right way and not allowing him to break out for these runs because you've rushed too far upfield or something like that. You don't want to break the contain if you're Carolina. And so that's where it's a little different this week. Yes, you want to see, another 2-3 sack game from Milcard Abujanade or Tyler Thompson. That's what you're hoping that you're going to be able to see. But it's more about being smart, about containing him in the pocket and making him beat you with his arm. Because if you do that, you're right. I think Carolina can win this game because I don't think that Robbie Ashford is necessarily the most talented quarterback. I mean, I said it to start the year. I didn't think he should be their starting quarterback. I thought Deshaun Purdy was better than him. But he has proven throughout the year that he can lead them to wins. And a lot of what he's able to do is because of how well he uses his legs. Carolina's got to make sure that doesn't necessarily happen in this game. One other note that I did want to put in here for the Tar Heel storylines before we talk about the bowl hopes is the availability of Thad Dixon, and looking up the current ACC availability report for this week to see whether or not it has been updated. We should have the initial one out right now. And yes, listed on there as questionable is Thad Dixon. So there is a chance that he can come back this week for Carolina. Caleb Cost also in there listed as questionable. So that is certainly interesting. I don't know what type of injury he's dealing with. He did go down in the game against Stanford. I believe he was one of the players that was down at one point. And so who knows what all he's dealing with. But this is certainly big news for Carolina that they could get arguably their best cornerback at the start of the season back. Now the question becomes ultimately, if he is back for this game, how much does this help Carolina's defense? There's some people that are pointing out that since he has been off the field for Carolina, this defense has gotten better. Is that something that really speaks volumes to just how impactful he actually was? I think more of what it is that when Thad Dixon does return, whether it's this week, next week, whenever that time is, I think you need to see Thad Dixon out there at one cornerback spot, and you need to see Jaden Patterson out there at the other cornerback spot. Even if teams start to pick a little bit more on Jaden Patterson and go after him, we'll learn whether or not he is a guy that's capable of being a starting caliber corner the rest of the way this season and heading into next season, where with Marcus Allen, I think we know what Marcus Allen is. We know that he's incredibly inconsistent. He's not going to be here next year. So that's the way that Carolina should go about it at the cornerback spot, but I'm not sure if they're going to go about it that way when Thad Dixon can return.
Yeah, it will be to be determined. I think Carolina's growth defensively in the absence of Thaddeus Dixon was just a coincidence. I don't think that he was a guy that was holding them back. I mean, you put him on the football field, he becomes your best man-to-man corner instantly right away. And he brings an emotional edge that I think you like having in that secondary as well. The most important thing you said is that his potential return, and it's imminent, like it's either going to be either this week or next, should spell the end of Marcus Allen's Tar Heel career. That we should never see him again outside of this, rotation or something like that. And I don't mean to say that in such a pejorative way, but when Stanford was making their mini comeback last week, who were they throwing the football at? They were throwing the football at Marcus Allen. And there was even a fan that sat in front of us that heard us grumbling, and he turned around and said, "Yeah, this has to stop. This guy, it's not good, man. He's not an ACC caliber corner to start, and he's never really built off of what I thought was a really strong close to his freshman season. One of the more disappointing defensive players we've seen in the last handful of years, and so hopefully with Thad Dixon back, that spells the end of him, because our team's going to target Jaden Patterson a little bit more often. They are. I just think he's tough enough to overcome that and play through that, because that kid's got an attitude and a swagger that you need to have at that cornerback spot. He's not afraid to get down in the run game. I think he does a really good job fighting off blocks when the teams throw on the boundary or throw a screen his way. And I just feel a lot better about those two corners as opposed to when Marcus Allen's on the field. So hopefully Thad Dixon's ready to go this week, because you put him back in the fold with what Carolina's front seven is doing. And this would be, the best that this defense has looked from a talent perspective all year long at all three levels. And his return helps shore up the back end. And that's what that's the last thing this defense is missing, because you're going to need him for Duke and you're going to need him against NC State. You get him back this week, Carolina can maybe get one step closer to getting to a bowl game, because he's that much of a difference maker. When as good as Carolina's been in the front seven, you solidify this back end. You could be talking about the best defense we've seen from Carolina at all three levels since Butch Davis was here in the mid-2000s.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you look at these two corners, and you just compare the numbers. Marcus Allen, 33 catches on 48 targets so far this year for 420 yards and 3 touchdowns allowed. He's allowing a 116.7 quarterback rating against. Jaden Patterson, who has been playing opposite of him on the other side at the outside corner spot. It's not like he's been playing in the slot and now we're saying, hey, let's kick him to the outside. 17 catches on his 28 targets, 196 yards, no touchdowns, 4 pass breakups for him, 4 pass breakups as well for Marcus Allen this year, which just shows you exactly what Marcus Allen is. Marcus Allen is a hit and miss type of corner. And he is very similar. I know it's a guy that, we haven't talked about a lot this year in Dallas, but very similar to, if you remember, an NFL comp for him would be Trayvon Diggs. The thing is that Trayvon Diggs is a guy that had the interception numbers. He don't have the interception numbers, but he's very much like that, where there's some times where he's right on a guy in coverage. He's right there. There's other times that when he gets beat badly. When teams start attacking him, they're going to start attacking him a lot, and there's nothing you can really do. I mean, Jaden Patterson's allowing a 67 quarterback rating against, guys. That's one of the best marks on the entire team, especially at the cornerback spot. So I think it shows you that this needs to be the guy that is on the field for Carolina. opposite of a guy in Thad Dixon that had a really strong start to the year, fell off a little bit right before the injury, did have the moment against Clemson where he gets beat down the field. But other than that, was really Carolina's best defensive back. So I think that's the way that they should approach it. I think his return gives Carolina a legitimate chance to shut down any passing game that they face. And that's the hope in this game against Florida State, that maybe they can recreate what Florida State was able to do against them a couple of weeks ago if you're Carolina. All right, let's get to the keys to the game for this one and then pick the game before we get to our closing note. The keys to the game, really, it starts with number one, winning the line of scrimmage. Carolina has to do that. And you may say, well, this seems like a key in just about every game. It's one that hasn't been up here in a while, though, for Carolina, because we felt like, for the most part, Carolina was going to be able to take care of business. In this one, you have to be able to do it. You've got to be able to run the football in this game if you're Carolina. That's what sets this offense up for the most success. All you got to do to know that that is the case is see the game against Syracuse. Also, see the game earlier in the season against Richmond. When Carolina's run game's at its best, that's when Carolina's offense is at its best. I think on the other side, that's going to be key as well, because if you're going to be able to slow down this run game that Wake Forest has, whether it's Claiborne or Robbie Ashford, you've got to win your battles up front in one-on-one situations. Carolina's been able to do it for the most part. There were some times last week that I thought the line got pushed around a little bit by Stanford, but it wasn't consistent, and the group responded whenever they needed to. They need to be able to do that again in this game if they want to find a way to come out with a victory.
Yeah, look, Carolina's got 3 straight games against in-state opponents. Translation, Belichick and the staff, they're going to treat those like division games. Whenever you watch the NFL and you watch your division games, what gets talked about the most? Line of scrimmage. And whoever wins at the line of scrimmage usually wins the football game. And that's going to be the same case for Carolina down the stretch. And it starts with Wake Forest. And the thing is that your opponent knows that as well, because your opponent plays a similar style to you. If they win up front, if they can establish the line of scrimmage on offense to be able to run the football, it usually spells a good day for their offense. If they can win the line of scrimmage and limit the run game for the opponent and get after the quarterback, it really spells a good day for their defense. And so it's like this. It's a simple concept with this game. Whichever offensive line creates better running lanes for their running backs, and whichever defensive line does a much better job getting at the opposition's quarterback and slowing down their run game, they're probably going to win the football game. It's really just that simple with the way that these teams are constructed. They play such a similar style, which means whichever one's out executes the other, and then their play style is probably going to win the game. I think what you worry about is Carolina's offensive line, just, because of all the injuries and then the guys that you had leave the team early on in the season. Where are they at coming into this game? I think Carolina's defensive line has quietly developed a little bit more depth than maybe we thought was going to be there at different points back in September. So I think Carolina's defensive line will be up to the task. It's really, can they do enough offensively to create some running lanes for Damon June, Davian Goss, and hold up for Gio Lopez to make the throws he's going to have to make. So, I think you need to be prepared for an ugly football game because both these teams are going to try to pull each other into a phone booth, and whichever offense and defensive line combination plays the best probably will show up on the scoreboard on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I feel more confident in Carolina's defensive line clearly than I feel in their offensive line, but we have seen Carolina's offensive line show up at certain points this season when they've needed to. Hopefully this is a game where Carolina's offensive line can show up for this battle and at least hold their own. I mean, that's the thing. Yes, you want to win the line of scrimmage, but on that side of the ball, can you just hold your own, allow Carolina to run the football just enough and protect your quarterback just enough to be able to make enough plays to get out of there? I think this is going to be a game in the teens, and so that isn't necessarily as difficult as if it was a game where Carolina needed to score in the 30s, 40s, or 50s like they have in years past. Second key to the game, win the turnover battle. So this means that Carolina's got to make sure they take care of the football. They did that for the most part in the game against Stanford, but you've got to be able to create turnovers in this game. Force Robbie Ashford into some mistakes. That's certainly something that he is capable of doing, and it's on this defensive line to be smart about it when you're getting after the quarterback to make sure that you're containing him in the pocket. But, yeah, let's force him into some of those mistakes that we've seen from him so far in his career. If you can force some turnovers, it's going to put you in a really good spot. It will give you some of those short fields for your offense as well, which should be helpful for Carolina with their offense going up against this defense for Wake Forest.
I think that's the most important thing. This is going to be a field position game. So can you create turnovers on the plus side of the field to set your offense up instead of having to drive the ball 75, 80 yards? Can you ask them to move it 35 to 40 to get a touchdown or two? Because if you can do that, that could very well be the difference in the ball game. Because if Carolina's got to move the football up and down the field consistently, then I think it's going to be a lot harder to see them, or it makes it harder for them to win the game. But if you can get some of those short fields where you got to move it maybe half the length of the field, I think Carolina's offense has been very opportunistic at times at scoring off of turnovers. It's something that Belichick teams were really good at in New England this time in the NFL. It's something they work on a lot in practice. And then on the flip side, yeah, you can't do the same thing to them. You can't give their offense short fields to try to maximize their possession. So, the thing is both these quarterbacks at times have proven they can take care of the football, but at times these quarterbacks have proven that you get after them, they're going to make a mistake or two that could be the difference in you winning or losing the football game. Hopefully Gio Lopez has learned from the mistakes that he made against Virginia, because I think this game is going to be played very similar, and his individual mistakes ended up costing Carolina. Hopefully you can force Robbie Ashford to make some of those mistakes he's made during his career at different times. And if so, maybe Carolina's defense can either generate a defensive score or give Carolina enough short fields to generate the points they need to come away with the win.
Final key to the game, score when you get to the red zone. And, yeah, I would love to say touchdowns when you get to the red zone for Carolina, but this is going to be such a low-scoring game that even when you get there, just finding a way to score, not coming away with empty possessions because you fumble out of the back of the end zone, your quarterback throws late on a route, and it gets intercepted. Those are the types of things that you're trying to avoid. Very similar to, as you said, that game against Virginia. I think it's going to be a very similar type of game for Carolina. And so I think if you're the Tar Heels, you just need to find a way to, when you get in that red zone, that you are putting points on the board. You might not be down there a ton. So if that's the case, then it needs to be touchdowns. But you got to score when you get into the red area. There's been too many times this year where Carolina has come away with empty possessions, especially in these close games. This one's going to be another close one. So it's about the execution when you get down into that area.
Yeah, it's something Michael Lombardi talks about every week on the radio show, those 4-point plays. You want to do a good job defensively to limiting those, but you want to do a better job offensively creating them. And this, we're not exaggerating. If Carolina, let's say, gets into the red zone 3 times but kicks 2 field goals, that could be the difference in between them winning or losing the game, as opposed to maybe they get 2 touchdowns and kick a field goal, because you don't feel like they're gonna have a lot of possessions in the red area. So you really got to maximize those to the point where maybe, I know this game, where points are going to be at a premium, but if Carolina wants to be aggressive and if they get a 4th and 1, a 4th and 2, I think I'd be almost okay with them going for it, chasing 6 as opposed to settling for 3. You got to wait and see how the game ultimately plays out. And if it feels like it's playing out the way that, maybe 14 or 17 is going to get the job done, then maybe you do take those field goals. But I think this could be a game where if Carolina wants to be aggressive and be willing to go for it on a fourth down so they can set themselves up to have a better chance at scoring a touchdown as opposed to kicking a field goal, I think I would be okay with that because I think whichever team is more efficient on third down overall and whichever team is more efficient in the red zone, it's probably going to be the telltale sign of which offense has the better day. And when we expect this to be a low-scoring football game, whichever offense has the most yards, most first downs, probably means they have the most points. And hopefully we're talking about that for Carolina's offense when we recap this thing on Monday night.
Yeah, and give credit to Carolina here over the last couple of weeks. They have been much better in the red zone. Not perfect, but they've been much better at making sure that they score points when they get in the red zone and that they score touchdowns, especially in the second half of these games. That's going to be key for Carolina, I think, in this one. Again, if you get, a couple field goals on the board early, then maybe you can focus on scoring those touchdowns late in the game when you get into those red zone scenarios. All right, let's get to our predictions for the game. Carolina against Wake Forest in Winston-Salem on the CW. It'll be a 4:30 game over there. What do you see happening in this one?
Yeah, I said it when we recapped the Stanford game on Monday. I think Carolina's in a really good spot to finish 3-0 down the stretch. And I wasn't just saying that because we were coming off a win. It's something that I just feel. I think momentum is on Carolina's side. I think they've bought into the message, to the process that Bill Belichick and this coaching staff are trying to get across. They know who they are. They know their identity. They've become a team. You can see that when you watch them in person, where there's cohesiveness on the sideline and the offense rooting for the defense rooting for the offense. And I think they know what these final three games represent and what is on the line in terms of, getting to a bowl game, but restoring order in the state. And yes, Carolina has done their job against Wake Forest, but they haven't beaten State in a handful of years. They blew the game to Duke last year. This is the first of 3 straight games against in-state foes. They're going to be treated like division games in the National Football League. I think there's going to be an added motivation to come away with all 3 of these games. So I think Carolina wins. I think they make just enough plays on offense deep into the second half. I think Gio Lopez does what he's done in the second half and wins where he makes those throws he has to make. I think Carolina walks out of Winston-Salem with a 20-16 win on Saturday.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling something very similar in this one. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I think both defenses are going to show up. They've, haven't been talked about as much as they probably should have for what they have been doing for most of the season. Wake Forest, I think, has done it against a little bit better competition than Carolina has. But I do think that Carolina is, starting to get to the point where now they can prove it against good competition. Both of these teams were able to shut down Virginia. And I think that really means something because Virginia's offense at the start of the year was one of the best in the entire country. I think you'll see both of these defenses have their moments. I think for Carolina, it'll look ugly at certain times offensively like it has in these last few games. But I think the way that Carolina is playing in the second half of these games is really what's going to be the difference in this one. And again, I think Carolina just they have something on Wake Forest when it comes to this overall series, and especially here recently where Carolina has just made enough plays to find a way to win these games. I feel like they're going to do that again in this one. It might not be the prettiest performance from Carolina across the board, but I think that their defense, you'll see another strong performance from the defensive line. The edge rushers will do exactly what they need to do. It might not be a game where you see nearly as many sacks, but it'll be a smart game where Carolina contains the pocket, doesn't let Robbie Ashford go crazy with his legs. They force a couple of turnovers because they're forcing him to win the game from the pocket with his arm. And I think that ultimately leads to a couple of scores for Carolina in this game. I think the running game does just enough for Carolina, gives them a little bit of a pulse, but ultimately it's going to be Gio Lopez making plays in the second half for Carolina when they need him to. That short passing game that's been so successful. You need some plays after the catch from guys like Jordan Shipp and Kobe Paysour. I think you'll get enough of those in this game. I think this one's a really, really low-scoring affair between these two sides. I like Carolina to win this one 17-13 over Wake Forest. So that wraps up our look at the game against Wake Forest. Really quickly, we'll get to our closing notes for tonight. I mentioned that Carolina did land a commitment in the 2026 class earlier today. That would be four-star athlete David Davis, who commits to Carolina, flips his commitment from Penn State to Carolina after taking an official visit over the weekend. He, of course, took an official visit to West Virginia back a couple of weeks ago, and Carolina was battling them for his services, but really Carolina blew him away on his recruiting visit, and that was really the difference for him. Not sure exactly where they're going to play him at. I think it could either be corner, which is what he's listed on some of the recruiting websites as. I think Rivals has him listed as a cornerback, so that is certainly a spot that they could play him at. Played a lot of safety this year for Amani Christian Academy, who is still playing, by the way, so he's still playing a lot of safety for them this year. Played a lot of deep safety as well, so that could be another area where Carolina could possibly look to play him when he arrives to campus. Think he's got a chance to be an early contributor with the talent that he brings to the table. To read more about that, read more of our scouting report on him, as well as some of his stats from this season. Make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Also, another note that we want to give you here, a game that is currently going on as we are recording right now. Drake May and the offense back out onto the field for the New England Patriots against the New York Jets. Jets took the early lead in this one 7-0, but the Patriots have bounced back with 2 second quarter scores. Drake May 11 of 12 so far in this game for 110 yards, and just saw that incompletion. The first one of the night looked like a drop from his wide receiver, but he is having a fantastic start to this game. TreVeyon Henderson is the guy who has found the end zone twice, but Drake continues what has been an amazing season, and a season that earlier this week, at least on one betting site, had him as the betting favorite to be the league MVP for this season. So certainly going to keep tabs on what he's doing the rest of the year. And we'll be talking about that here on the podcast as we get down the stretch, because eventually we're going to get to a point where we're waiting for a bowl game for Carolina, or the season is over and we're just waiting on portal stuff. And so we'll have a little bit of time to talk a little bit more about Drake May and the run that he's making. So I just wanted to keep you up to date on that. Make sure you head over to the website, guys, HeelToughBlog.com. Read everything that we've got up there for you. Plenty of recruiting notes that we've got up there for you. Carolina lost a commitment at the tight end position earlier this week, so make sure you go and read about that, where Carolina is going at the tight end position moving forward. We've got that in that article for you guys. A look at some of the targets that Carolina has. Then you got Nate Salmon, the 3-star tight end who is coming from New Zealand. He is a guy that played professional basketball over there and now is trying his hand at football. He has 4 years of eligibility, so certainly going to be a very interesting prospect for Carolina that they could pick up in the 2026 class. Make sure you read about him, and then we'll have an article that'll be going up here after the podcast is over for you guys on Carson Baker, the 4-star running back that is taking an official visit to Carolina as well. So make sure you read about all of that stuff on the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Of course, we're going to have you prepared for the game against Wake Forest with a preview. That one will be up on the morning of the game. So make sure that you guys are keeping an eye out for that. And then we'll recap the game. Hopefully, we can get that recap to you on Saturday night, but we'll have to wait and see. Depends on what we have to do work-wise as to whether or not I'll be able to get that up and out to you guys, or if we'll have to wait until Sunday to be able to do that. Meanwhile, on the basketball side of things, Josh has it covered with everything going on with Tar Heel basketball. Preview of the NC Central game will be up in the morning for you guys, and then he'll have the recap of the NC Central game for you sometime on Saturday morning that you guys will be able to read. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye out for that. On the Four Corners podcast side of things, well, it's the same areas that you find this podcast. The Heel Tough Blog Facebook page, the Twitter page as well. We retweet every edition of the podcast there. It's Josh's personal Twitter as well, where the live stream originates from. So make sure you go there and give him a follow as well so that you don't miss any of the live streams when we got it going on. And then YouTube, that is something that we are continuing to hammer home. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and make sure you go over there and watch on YouTube. Getting those YouTube numbers up is something that we're really pushing here still. So make sure that you guys do that for us if you could. I love that you watch on Facebook, love that you watch on Twitter, but if you could help us out and go over there to that Facebook page or to that YouTube page and give us a subscription and make sure you watch over there as well, that would really help us out. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.